All right, so matchup that matters. What do you have here?
Well, when you talk about these teams, there's not as many strengths really that you can pull from, but one of the strengths that you can pull from with the New York Giants is that defensive line, sexy Dexy and all. And it's against this Panthers offensive line. I think this comes against the trenches kind of to figure out who's going to get the better of each other. Because at this point, so Giants defensive line, top 10 in pass rushing grade, 72.7 PFF grade. But the Panthers O line, top 10 in pass blocking grade. They're ranked eighth with 75.7. So, I think the Panthers offensive line got a really bad rap over the last couple of years, and rightfully so. They weren't really a good unit, but they've really shed that, and they are a good unit now. And now we know that they're going to be blocking for Bryce Young yet again in Germany. So it's really going to matter about how they can protect him and against a really formidable Giants defensive line, which for whatever the Giants are going through as a team, this is still a unit to be feared. And that's, I think, just going to tip the scales and see what these Carolina Panthers can do. Because if this Giants defensive line does overwhelm their offense, the Panthers offensive line, I mean, there's really not much that we can talk about with the Carolina Panthers then. And this is something the Giants will roll away with.
Yeah, obviously, I think that's a major matchup in this game. There's no doubt about it. I'm really looking forward to this one though, because although the Saints are certainly reeling, to the point where they fired Dennis Allen, since week 2 they haven't won a football game, and they lose to Carolina, and so it's not like it's the toughest team out there. But we kind of look at Carolina as the worst team in the NFL, and last week they were still able to come in and say, all right, well, we might be one of the bottom teams in the league this year, but that doesn't mean we're going to lose every game no matter what. And I like the fight that this team had, and specifically I like the confidence that I saw from Bryce Young. I went back and I watched the Saints game from this past week, and then I also watched the first Saints game that they played in week 1. Bryce Young, the starter in both of those games. Bryce just was off. I mean, he was just not confident. He was not trusting things, specifically against tight coverage. He really didn't give his guys a legitimate chance to come down with the football against tight coverage. Now, when it came to zone, he was able to anticipate decently well, feed the ball in between, the linebackers and the corners and the safeties and things like that when guys were running open. He was able to do that, but it was when the Saints were playing man coverage, especially cross-field stuff, horizontal stuff. Bryce just he was not comfortable giving his guys a realistic chance to get the football, because that also means, especially in the NFL, when you do that, you are giving the defense a chance to get their hands on the ball. And he just wasn't willing to do that. Against New Orleans this time around, he was. Now, specifically, you could see that in his passing grade against single coverage. 86.1 passing grade against single coverage this past week against the Saints, which was the second highest single game, single coverage passing grade of his career. So it's basically, layman's term, it was one of his best games that we have seen from Bryce Young in terms of the confidence to attack single coverage. Now, the Giants, 37.1 single coverage grade as a team this season. That is 32nd in the NFL. Deonte Banks specifically, 25.6 single coverage grade in the NFL, which is worst among full-time starting corners. So this is another ripe matchup for Bryce to be confident and trust his receivers. I know he doesn't have Deontay Johnson anymore. Now he doesn't have Jonathan Mingo anymore, but still, the Giants are not good at single coverage situations, and unfortunately for them, you can't just play zone all the time. You do have to mix in some man and some single coverage stuff. So when they do, does Bryce have that same sort of confidence to attack it this week the way that he did last week? This is an opponent where he should be able to do that, and I would love to see a repeat good performance to sort of stack things up for Bryce Young here. So that, to me, is my matchup that matters. What's your plus factor here in this game?
Yeah, rolling actually right off of that. If you go to the other side of things, somebody else that's really good in single coverage is Malik Neighbors. And he has 319 yards for single coverage this year, which ranks ninth. His teammate Darius Slayton actually ranks seventh with 351 yards against single coverage. And Daniel Jones has an 86.2 PFF grade targeting single coverage, which is sixth in the league. So if there's something that Daniel Jones does well, it is when teams play him in single coverage. And to your point, you can't just sit back in zone all the time. You're going to need to man up these guys. You're going to need to press these guys a little bit. And what happens, though, is that the Giants are actually pretty good at it. And if they can get going in single coverage and take advantage of those situations when the Panthers do play them that way, that's going to make a lot of difference for this Giants offense.
My plus factor is rookie Jalen Coker. And I think when you look at the Panthers now, no Jonathan Mingo, no Deontay Johnson, like I mentioned, who are they going to throw the ball to? Well, they're going to throw it a little bit to Jatavian Sanders, their rookie tight end, but they're also going to throw it to their undrafted rookie wide receiver, Jalen Coker, who actually has the highest receiving grade on the team. He has a 79.5 receiving grade, and that includes Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Mingo when they were on the squad. He also has a 109.5 quarterback rating when targeted, which is by far the highest on the team. So this is somebody, if you don't know a lot about Jalen Coker, which I understand, he was an undrafted free agent, Holy Cross wide receiver, big time record breaker. I think he has the record for most receiving touchdowns, most receiving yards. Not sure if he has receptions, but it makes sense if he had receptions as well. He's just somebody who really was able to produce at an extremely high level throughout his college career, and making the Panthers roster, it was sort of a signal to them to say, hey, this guy brings us a high floor. This is not your regular undrafted wide receiver. This is somebody who we might be able to count on even in a rookie season. And now we're certainly seeing that from him. So I expect the threat percentage, the wide receiver usage, the yards per route run for your fantasy football person out there to be a lot higher for Jalen Coker as the season goes on. So that is my plus factor here in this game.